Welcome back to Introduction to Missions. Today we're talking about teaming and partnering. See, the function of a team is so important because what a person can do is one thing, but what a team can do is exponential. And then when you add partners or partnering teams to that, it becomes incredible what you can do to affect the work. What does an IMB team look like? How does it function? How do you partner well with others, whether it be other missionary organizations, whether it be local churches or even volunteers? That's going to be the subject of today's focus. Let's get Introduction to Missions. Today we're talking about teaming and partnering. When we think about teaming, we're talking about learning to work with others. Now, when we say the word team, what does that mean to you? All kinds of ideas can come to mind. Like when you see this picture right here, what do you think about this? We think about, well, this is a basketball game. We think about there are 5 players on the court at each time. We think about how do they work together? What are they trying to accomplish together? And we think about the bench and the reserves there. But then when you see a team like this, how is that similar? How is that different than a basketball team? Where here you've got an individual trying to compete among other individuals. Or maybe when you go to a track meet, what's happening here? What kind of goals do you have that are the same? What are similar here? In a track meet, you're trying to run and do different things. Or what about a chess team? What are you doing there? Individual play, but collective effort. What are your thoughts there? What are your roles there in regard to teaming there? Or when you think about team, do you think about a family? How is this a team? Or a couple? How is this a team? Now, when you think about team and what that is, there are at least 3 different ways you can look at this in regard to teaming on the field. There is the assigned team, so you going with the International Mission Board will be on a team as a team member. Then there may be what you might consider a partnering team, where you're partnering with nationals, partner with other Great Commission Christians or GCCs, or you're partnering with volunteers to engage with others. Then there may be an informal team where you just get together with some guys on a Thursday afternoon and you all just go out and practice witnessing. There can be all kinds of ways you could frame up team. Now, when the IMB mentions team, what is a team? Well, according to the IMB, a missionary team is an identifiable group of disciples. And so there are specific people, believers, who are in a group. They meet regularly and they care for each other selfishly. They partner with one another intentionally in order to make disciples and multiply churches among a particular unreached people and or place. And so when the IMB is thinking about a team, they're not talking about a loose team or a team as, hey, we're all over here, but they're talking about a group of believers who are meeting on a regular basis. They care for each other and they're intentional in trying to make disciples and multiply churches among a specific people or in place. Now, when we think about teaming, we need to consider how do we work well together, because one of the biggest causes of conflict on the field is team dynamics and how teams function. In fact, when we think about team styles, you can see quickly in these 4 team styles how you could have different conflicts. Where you have one team style is let me help you, where the preference here, they defer to others freely. They don't necessarily take charge. They want to serve others. Another team style is let's go, where a person's in charge, they're a pioneer, always moving the group ahead with new vision and new insights. Then there's another team style that's let's be careful. They desire in-depth detail work. They need to consider all the facts before they make any decisions. Then you have a let's stay together team style. It's very team oriented. They try to draw the group together and help it stay together as they make progress. Now, all four of these are real team styles. There's the let me help you, there's the let's go, there's the let's be careful, and the let's stay together. When you think about this, what are the benefits and what are the liabilities of these groups? Well, the benefits are pretty obvious. Let me help you is a very servant-minded team style where you're trying to not be a micromanager or bossy, but just trying to help others. A let's go team style is really trying to move, to actually make some progress to get something done. A let's be careful team style is to understand what they're doing and the pros and cons of an approach in order to be very deliberate in the work. Now, let's stay together team style really tries to keep the team all informed and all on the same page as they move forward. Now, when we look at these and the liabilities of each of these, there can be some negative sides or some cons to each of these team styles. In regards to the let me help you, some of the liabilities include not being directive enough, or may have a hard time of saying no because they just want to help others. The let's go leadership style or team style, the liabilities there, they may not listen well because they just want to let's go. They don't bother me with details. It's okay if some people aren't with us, let's just go. Or they may not listen well and it may challenge others without all the facts. Then you have the let's be careful. They could be critical of others or new ideas. They're like, yeah, we've never tried that before, or let's just be careful before we get too hasty and make a decision. And they may stay too close to the plan. They may not be able to adapt to new situations or even to opportunities that are there. When we think about the let's stay together in their liabilities, they may be fearful of making decisions for the group because they want to keep team unity. They may be afraid to speak out, to leave anyone behind. Now, when we think about these different teaming styles and liabilities, we need to recognize that there is pros and cons to all these, and there's a benefit to having different people on your team who are wired differently. When we think about task versus team balance, task being, what is the purpose of your team, of a team, and what is the purpose of your team in accomplishing that task, and how that team functions is important. One thing to ask is, what kind of team is it? A basketball team and a chess team or a gymnastics team or track and field team, all those are different kinds of teams. And so what is my team focus on? What is it trying to do? So if you take a team and you have someone on the team who is a let's go, how does that affect the balance of that team? Well, a let's go approach is going to be like, well, let's just go make progress. Let's go get after what we're supposed to get after among this people group, and let's do that. But then if you have someone on your and they're going to be very task focused. Then if you have someone on your team who is let's stay together, they're very team focused. They're like, we want to build team, we want to meet as team. And so the tension between those two is getting something done versus building the group itself. And there needs to be some tension here, some balance here. So you may be asking, so what about these different teaming styles and teaming liabilities? Well, you really need to ask the so what questions. So what if your roommate or spouse is the same or different than you? How does that work? If you are a both let's play it safe, let's be careful. How much are you going to be innovative? How much are you going to be very forward in the work? and how is that going to break down those type of relationships? What if your team leader is not a let's go, and you are? You're wanting him to lead and take charge and to do something, make some decisions, and he's a let's stay together or let's be careful type of leader. What about the teaming if everyone on your team has the same style? In each of these different teaming styles, it's important to recognize that people are wired differently, and that there are benefits to how they're wired to help a team to be balanced, to help serve each other, to help take initiative, to consider the details and the implications of actions, and to try to create as much team unity and bring the team along as best as possible. And so when a team is all the same, it can set itself up for some liabilities or deficits because it's not well balanced. And so whenever you're building a team, you definitely want people who are different than you, who think different than you, to help bring team balance to that team. Now, there are different stages or cycles of a team. Normally it is a team is forming, it's norming, and it's storming, then it's performing. So, and so basically the team forms, it normalizes what a team is, then a team has conflict, there's a storm, and then it works through that storm to perform. Or it may be that it forms, and then it all of a sudden goes through a storm in order to deal with the conflict and the interpersonal relationships, in order for it to normalize itself so it can perform. Sometimes even a team has to mourn and reform before it can perform. You see, every time you add a team member, it's like adding a different ingredient to a recipe. That the flavor changes, and you have to be very careful in order to maintain a balance. I mean, when you think about your arrival to a team, how is that going to affect that team in its formation, in its normalization? How is it going to create any conflict or lessen conflict in order for it to perform? The thing about teaming is teams, whether it's your IMB team or a partnering team or an informal team, teams need to learn to work together, learn to utilize the best of each team member and to go into the same direction. Now, very closely linked to teaming is also partnering. When we think about partnering, we're talking about working with others for different goals. Now, the IMB has several levels of what they would call strategic relationships. See, IMB missionaries relate to non-IMB entities at different levels depending on their goals and needs. These relationships range from expedient to eternal in their significance. And so the deeper the level, the greater the significance of that relationship. For example, a level 1 relationship, the goal of that is basically entry to the target population. Maybe through tourism, business, education. You're just trying to get into the country, get into the context of the people. And so the guiding principle on this level of relationship is suitability to the target population. What is going to get me access and the longest access to the people? And so you may be partnering with a university or partnering with a business that may have no significance in regards to Christian faith. They just get you access. Now, a level 2 relationship, the goal here is prayer for the population, ministry to felt needs, such as humanitarian needs, and the purpose here is pre-evangelism. So if there's any ways I can begin to introduce them to Christian concepts and the gospel, that would be great. The guiding principle here is to respond to spiritual and physical needs. And so there may be a broader body of believers that you may partner with in order to get people to pray. There may be some humanitarian groups that you would partner with with in order to meet some physical temporary needs. But then as we get deeper, the levels become more focused. So a level 3 relationship, the goal here is evangelism and scripture distribution. You want to be careful here because the guiding principle on who do I partner with here is a commitment to biblical evangelism. Do they believe in the gospel, that we are sinners, Christ is the only Savior, and that we are saved by grace through faith? And those are the groups we may be willing to partner with. It may be a little broader than these other levels we'll talk about in regards to discipleship and church planting, but here they're committed to biblical evangelism. A level 4 partner, here we're talking about the goal of planting New Testament churches where they're Baptist or at least Baptistic. And so the guiding principle are they committed to planting New Testament churches that are Baptist or Baptistic. And the circle narrows here because we're getting to more specifics theologically and missiologically in regard to the work. Then a level 5 relationship is ministering. The goal here is ministerial training, theological education, ordination, deploying missionaries. Here is a core discipling, and the guiding principle here is doctrinal purity. Do they stay with the Word? Are they found sound in the Word of God here? And so see these different levels here. We don't take a level 5 description and make that the filter through which we gain access to the people. But nor do we take, say a level 2, someone who's willing to pray for the people in the place and make them a partner in discipleship and church formation. And so these different spheres of relationship, and they help us have a guiding description on who we partner with and on what level and on what basis do we say yes and no to certain partnerships. Now, when we think about developing partners, there are 5 key things to consider. The first thing is we want to be a good model of a biblical pattern. And we want to model all the core tasks of a missionary life. But what we're also wanting to do is be a presence and be part of their life. And it's one thing if you teach them how to do something, but you're never in their life. It's like a professor who is involved in the life of the students outside the classroom, a pastor who's involved in the life of the people outside of the pulpit, a missionary. If he's going to develop people in relationships, he's going to have a presence in their life. He needs to model a biblical pattern, but have a presence in their life. The second thing is he needs to observe obedient behavior. You're looking for those who actually do what you teach and what you model. Those are the ones you want to spend the most time with. But the key thing here, the principle as you observe, is you're wanting to have patience and basically take them where they are to where they need to be. Patience is where reality and the ideal meet. A lot of times a mom or dad becomes impatient with their kid because they're wanting them or expecting them to be where they're not. And patience meets them where they are and takes them where they need to be. So if you're going to develop your partners, you model a biblical pattern, you observe their obedient behavior, and you are patient, understanding that, hey, they need some time mentoring, some discipling, so that they can mature in the work. Third thing is delegation. You want to delegate authority and responsibility to obey all the Great Commission. They need to recognize that not only do they have the authority, they have the responsibility to obey all the Great Commission. And so one of the ways you do this is you ask them their perspective. What do you think? What do you think is the best way to get access to these people? What do you think is the best way to share the gospel? What do you think a new believer needs to know? How do you think a church forms? And so the more you get their perspective, you elevate their position and you show value in who they are and in what they do. But you're also recognizing that they too have authority and responsibility to obey the Great Commission. The fourth thing is you encourage. You encourage them through prayer and accountability. You help them recognize that it's not your work or their work, it's the Lord's work. You are trying to encourage them to be a part of the work, recognizing that you're both participants. Then we also look for them to reproduce what's been put into them. We want them to do as we do. And it's one thing for us to tell them to do something and they not do it. We want to look for them to not just be hearers of the word, but to do it. And so what does that mean? That means we need to practice. We need to not ask them to do things that we don't do. And so when we develop leaders, if you notice here, we want to model, observe, delegate, encourage, and look. And as we model, we want to be a presence in their life. As we observe, we want to be patient with where they are, helping them become mature in the work. As we delegate, we want to involve their perspective. As we encourage them, we help them recognize that they too are equal partners in the work. And as we look for them to reproduce, we need to make sure that we are practicing what we preach. These are some key ways to develop your partners, because being a good team member and being a partnering with others is how the work's going to be done. You'll recognize very quickly that the work is beyond just you. It's more than your team can do. In fact, it will take the mobilization of the people of God to take seriously their Great Commission responsibility for a people in a place to be engaged with the work. And so that's going to do it for the day. Hope this has been helpful as you consider teaming and partnering on the field. Until next time, have a great day. Well, that's going to do it for the day. I hope you see that the focus of the work has got to be central in our teaming and in our partnering. And in fact, the worst thing that can happen is to begin to partner with somebody, maybe a volunteer team or another partner that actually gets you out of focus in the work. Sometimes I've seen missionaries have a volunteer team come over and they have to actually stop the main thing, the core missionary task, to go do the pet project of the volunteer team. What a better strategy is to clearly communicate the strategic vision from the field's perspective and how that volunteer team fits into that perspective, so that when they come, it's not a diversion from the work, but it helps give momentum to the work. And when you begin to see that, you begin to see teaming and partnering at its best. Well, that's going to do it for the day. Until next time, have a great day.